Hi, I'm Rabbi Dunner. Welcome to my weekly share. Today we're going to focus on Purim, or at least we'll use Purim as a base, and then I'm going to explore a broader theme. This share is sponsored in memory of my very dear friend, Myrtle G. Sitowitz, Malka Bas Chaim Yaakov Eliyahu Shalom, whose yahrzeit is on the 1st of Nisan, and also in memory of her twin sister, Irene Goldstein, Rivka Bas Chaim Yaakov Eliyahu Shalom, whose yahrzeit is on the 17th of Nisan. Myrtle and Irene were born on Purim, and they both cherished Purim and always held it very close to their hearts. These two strong women, who followed in the footsteps of Queen Esther, are missed by all. May the neshamas have an aliyah. May we be zoche to see Tchias Hamesim. Let me start our share today with a question. When you think of Tanach, do you think of it as being funny? Probably not, right? Tanach is about faith, it's about prophecy, it's about morality, it's about war, it's about law. Basically, it's about serious stuff. But here's the thing, it's also funny. And I don't just mean, haha, that's amusing kind of funny. I mean, laugh out loud funny, sharp, satirical, biting, and at times even slapstick funny. Which brings me to Megillas Esther. If we were to classify Megillas Esther by literary genre, what would it be? You could call it political satire. You could even call it at times slapstick comedy. And it doesn't stop there, because the Talmud is also packed with humor, as we shall see. And Jewish history, well, let's just say this. If we didn't laugh, we'd cry. So today I want to explore how humor is woven into the fabric of Jewish tradition, not just as comic relief, not just as entertainment, but as a pedagogic tool and as a method of survival. Let's start with Purim. Purim is a really weird Jewish festival. Most Jewish holidays involve serious reflection, deep prayers, complex rituals, but Purim, it's loud, it's raucous, it's boisterous, it's ridiculous. Truthfully, it's a little bit over the top. And then you read Megillas Esther, and suddenly it all makes sense, because the whole Megillah is a satire. It's full of humor and comic relief. We have a king who's so incompetent and inept. He banishes and possibly executes his own queen, his wife, because a bunch of drunk advisors tell him it's a good idea, and he's left without a wife. We have a villain who's so full of himself he assumes the king wants to honor him, and only him, only to end up leading his mortal enemy through the streets on a royal horse in full public view. And we have an empire that issues irrevocable decrees about the role of wives, because they're afraid that if Queen Vashti has the audacity to stand up to Ahasuerus, all the women in the kingdom might start rebelling against their husbands. You literally couldn't make this stuff up. And don't even get me started on Esther's beauty regimen. 6 months in oil of myrrh, 6 months in perfumes and cosmetics. That's an entire year of spa treatments before meeting the king. I mean, what exactly was he looking for? A queen? Or was he looking for someone who smells like a high-end perfume department? And if all of that wasn't ridiculous enough, the Midrashim step in to add comedy fuel to the comic fire, because, let's be honest, Chazal saw the humor in this story and they leaned in. Here's one. Haman's daughter throws the contents of a toilet onto Haman's head because she assumes that the man leading the horse through the streets must be Mordechai and the man on the horse must be Haman. She gets it backwards, humiliates her father, and when she realizes what she's done, she jumps out of a window in shame. And here's another one. Haman and Mordechai, they knew each other for years. They were rivals long before the Megillah begins, sparring like Tom and Jerry. In fact, according to Targum Sheni on Esther, Haman once sold himself into slavery to Mordechai, which means that all of his hatred was really just one big inferiority complex. No wonder Mordechai refused to bow. And let's not forget Vashti. Why didn't she come when Ahasuerus summoned her? Well, the Gemara in Megillah Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis, offers a wild explanation. She grew a tail. Now, some commentaries understand this metaphorically, meaning she developed a skin disease like tzarat. But let's be honest. If the Medrash says she grew a tail, you have to imagine Chazal wanted us to laugh. Imagine Vashti waking up, looking in the mirror, and realizing she suddenly has a tail. And at that moment, she's supposed to parade herself before an entire royal court. I don't blame her for staying in her room. But all of this isn't just comic relief. The absurdity of the Megillah isn't a side note. It's the actual point. I mean that. Purim is a holiday about flipping the narrative. It's about mocking power. It's about laughing in the face of fear. Purim takes a world where we are vulnerable, where our enemies think they control the story, and it rewrites the story of that world so that we are the ones who are laughing. And on Purim itself, we can laugh heartily because Achashverosh, Haman, and all the other great rulers of history, they're gone. And we're still here. If that's not worth a laugh, I don't know what is. And the thing is this, Megillas Esther isn't the only Jewish text in which comedy appears. Humor is all over Tanach. Take the story of Ehud and Eglon in Perek Gimel of Shoftim. It's gory, it's ridiculous, and it's actually downright hilarious. Ehud is a left-handed warrior, which is already ironic because he's from the tribe of Binyamin, which literally means son of the right hand. Talk about a walking contradiction. But this actually works to his great advantage. In those days, everyone assumed warriors were right-handed. So when Ehud enters the palace, the guards only check his left side because a right-handed person would keep their weapon on their left for easy access. Ehud's weapon was hidden on his right thigh. That's the first joke. The ancient TSA agents failed spectacularly. Keystone cops. So now Ehud is armed and dangerous and he makes his way into King Eglon's private chamber. Now, figure this. Eglon is described as, well, let's just say generously proportioned. Okay, let's be blunt. Eglon was huge, like really huge. Tanakh doesn't pull punches. It literally says, "Ve'Eglon ish bari me'od." Eglon was a very fat man. That's it. That's the whole description. Not mighty ruler, not fearsome warrior, not wise king, just very fat guy. And Ozempic hadn't been invented yet. So Ehud approaches Eglon and says, "I have a secret message for you." Now Eglon, being a total egomaniac, assumes this is going to be some deep mystical revelation. So what does he do? He sends all his guards away. Yeah, he clears the room. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? So now it's just Ehud and Eglon. And Ehud leans in and says, "I have a message from God for you." And then, bam! Ehud whips out his hidden dagger and plunges it straight into Eglon's belly. And here's the detail Tanakh throws in, and it's pure comedy. Eglon is so fat that the entire sword disappears inside him, like the fat literally engulfs the blade, the handle, the whole thing. V'yovay hanitzov achar halahav v'yiskar hachelev ba'ad halahav ki lo sholaf hacheref mibitnoi. Even the handle went in after the blade, and the fat closed over the blade, for he did not withdraw the sword from his belly. Ehud literally loses his weapon inside the king. It's gone, disappeared, absorbed into the royal folds. Ehud basically stabs Eglon and then goes, well, that's in there now, no getting that back. And he just leaves the knife inside Eglon and walks away. Now, at this point, you might be wondering, where are Eglon's guards? Why aren't they checking on him? Oh, so here's the next piece of biblical slapstick. The guards assume Eglon's in the bathroom. Why? Because the verse says, "Vayetze haparshadon," Eglon's entrails spilled out. The Medrash, this is Yalkut Shimoni, explains that Eglon suffered immediate and dramatic gastrointestinal consequences from the stabbing. Yes, he literally had an accident. The worst kind of accident, right? So perhaps the guards smell something and they go, oh, the king must be doing his business. And instead of checking on him, they wait and wait and wait, because apparently King Eglon is known for spending a very long time in the bathroom. This was not an uncommon event. They literally think, yep, smells like the king is taking his time today. Probably giggled to each other. Hilarious. They stand there for so long that Ehud casually walks out of the palace, locks the doors behind him, and makes his escape. Eventually, the guards start getting nervous. It's been a while. Should we check on him? They finally go in and find Eglon dead on the floor, and the knife was still inside him, even though his insides are outside him. This is biblical slapstick at its finest. Ehud escapes, gathers the Israelites, and leads a rebellion against Moab. And because the Moabites were so caught off guard, Israel wins the battle. And the final kicker, the Pasuk says the land was at peace for 80 years. 80 years, all because one guy managed to sneak in a knife, stab an overweight king, and escape while the guards assumed the king was on the toilet. Now, let's talk about Eliyahu Hanavi on Har Carmel. Because if you think prophets were always serious, you haven't read this story properly. Here's the scene. It's a spiritual showdown, a prophetic duel between Eliyahu, the last remaining prophet of Hashem, and 450 prophets of Baal. The challenge? Let's see whose God actually answers. Which God shows up when called to do so by the faithful? Look it up. It's in Melachim Aleph, Perik Yud Ches. Both sides must prepare a sacrifice, but no fire is allowed. Only the real God can send fire from the heavens. So the prophets of Baal go first. It's a total setup. They set up their altar, place their offering on it, and begin their grand performance. They chant, they pray, they wave their hands in the air, they dance around the altar. They work themselves into a complete frenzy. And guess what happens? Absolutely nothing. Nothing happens. Crickets. No fire, no response. And this is where Eliyahu Hanavi, holy prophet of God, decides to start roasting them. I mean, he doesn't just mock them, he completely demolishes them with some of the best biblical sarcasm ever recorded. Here's what he says. Kiru b'kol godol ki Elohim hu, ki siach v'chi sigloi, v'chi derech loi, ulai yoshen hu, v'yikotz. Here it is in English. Come on, guys. Why don't you yell louder? Maybe your God really is a God. But maybe he's deep in thought, or maybe he's traveling, or maybe he's taking a nap. I mean, maybe you should wake him up. What must they have been thinking? And the best part, the word siach can also mean, in Hebrew, relieving oneself. Some of Forishim understand that Eliyahu was also suggesting maybe your God is busy in the bathroom. Yes, you heard that right. Let's face it, Eliyahu Hanavi, in the middle of one of the most intense moments of Jewish history, is basically heckling the competition like a stand-up comedian. Maybe your God is on vacation. Maybe he's meditating and lost track of time. Maybe he's having stomach issues and can't come to the altar right now. This isn't just mockery. This is absolute humiliation. Eliyahu is not just proving a theological point. He is publicly exposing their religious delusions by using humor, sarcasm, and outright ridicule. And what's even funnier is that the prophets of Baal take the bait. Obviously, they'd had a sense of humor bypass, because they do yell louder. They start cutting themselves. They go into a full religious meltdown. And still, you guessed it, nothing happens. No fire, no Baal, no divine intervention. Meanwhile, you could just imagine Eliyahu standing there, his arms crossed, shaking his head, rolling his eyes, maybe even chuckling. Then, after letting them embarrass themselves for hours, he steps forward, prays once, and boom! Fire rains down from heaven, and consumes everything, the lot. No dancing, no screaming, no self-inflicted wounds, just Hashem showing up with an epic mic drop. And then, finally, of course, we have the Talmud, the Gemara, which is filled with hilarious, absurd, and deeply insightful stories and passages. Let me share with you one of the funniest slapstick moments in the entire Talmud. Hanan Bisha, literally Hanan the Wicked, was the kind of guy who probably thought he was the smartest person in the room at all times, and to be fair, he kind of was, but not in a good way. One day, Hanan steals a cloak, an item of clothing, and instead of keeping it, he sells it to some poor guy who has no idea that it was stolen. Everything seems fine until the original owner spots the guy in the marketplace. He finds out, it's mine. Understandably, he wants his cloak back. So he takes the case to Rav Huna. Now, Rav Huna is a fair judge. He looks at the situation and tries to come up with a balanced ruling. The thief is long gone, or so he thinks. The buyer is innocent. He didn't know it was stolen. And the original owner, he wants his thing back. He deserves to get his cloak back. Rav Huna rules that if the owner wants his cloak back, he has to pay the buyer what he spent on it. Because the buyer, technically, is now the legal possessor of the item. The court wants to be fair to everyone and avoid causing unintended harm to the innocent buyer. Sounds kind of reasonable, right? Enter Hanan Bisha. He's there in the courtroom. He literally pops out of nowhere and he laughs in Rav Huna's face. Oh, I get it. So this means I can go and steal whatever I want, sell it off, and the victims will just have to pay to get their stuff back. Amazing! What a system! It's a great job for me. Thank you, Judge. Absolute troll behavior. He's standing in the courtroom mocking the entire justice system, exposing a ridiculous loophole. And worst of all, he's kind of right. It's humor that is targeting the absurdity of the system. The Talmud doesn't tell us what happened to Hanan Bisha after this. In a way, that's not the point of the story. It's actually possible that the story isn't even true, but it's used as a kind of teaching parable. Because what actually makes this story so funny and infuriating at the same time is that Hanan Bisha isn't wrong. He's smug and right in the worst possible way, and the way he made his point was through sardonic humor. I have a few more stories for you. Here's one from Maseches Tanis, Daf Chof, and it's the kind of story that makes you wince and laugh at the same time. Rabbi Elazar, who was the son of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, was a brilliant Torah scholar. He also had a sharp sense of humor. One day, he was heading home. He was feeling pretty good about himself. He had a long day of learning. He was in a good mood. He bumps into a guy who is, well, not exactly easy on the eyes. Well, instead of just greeting him politely, Rabbi Elazar decides to get a laugh at the man's expense. And with a smirk, he blurts out, "Wow, are all the people in your town as ugly as you?" The people around Rabbi Elazar all burst out laughing. But without missing a beat, the man fires back. "I don't know, could be, but maybe you should tell the one who made me how ugly his creation is." Oof, that backfired fast. Rabbi Elazar realizes he just got absolutely wrecked by this guy, and he immediately starts begging him for forgiveness. But the man isn't having it. They walk into town, where people start greeting Rabbi Elazar with great honor and respect. The ugly man turns to the crowd and calls them out. "You're honoring this guy? You know what he just said to me?" Cue awkward silence. The townspeople, now caught between their respect for Rabbi Elazar and their embarrassment, start pleading with the man to forgive him. Eventually, he agrees, but only on one condition. Rabbi Elazar has to promise never to judge someone by their appearance again. Brilliant. Then there's Maseches Brochos, which takes dream interpretation to a whole new level. Freud would be proud. Some insights are deep, some strange, and some make you wonder if the rabbis were just having fun messing with us, because they are very, very amusing. Take this one. What does it mean if you dream about a chicken? Here goes. One chicken, mazel tov, you're going to have a beautiful garden. not a child, not wealth, a garden, so you better buy yourself a rake. 2 chickens, get ready, you're about to become wiser, because obviously chickens equals wisdom. And if it's a white chicken that you dream about, you're in luck. You're about to have a fantastic year, or at least, I guess, a year in which you don't get chased by an angry rooster. But then the Talmud, the Gemara, really outdoes itself. What if you dream about a human head? Answer, prepare for greatness, because it means you're getting a promotion. And no, dreaming about a decapitated head is not mentioned, so let's assume context matters. And what if you dream about a river, a bird, or a pot? Congrats, you're officially at peace, because nothing says inner calm like a pot, apparently. What if you dream about lettuce? Bad news. It means your business is about to slow down, which kind of makes sense. After all, have you ever seen lettuce do anything quickly? But here's the best part. After all these wild explanations, the Talmud casually drops a bombshell. Dreams only mean something if you believe that they mean something. Translation, if you think dream interpretation is nonsense, congratulations, you're immune. No bad omens, no mysterious messages, no worrying about what that dream about dancing pickles might mean. So next time you dream about a roasted chicken, don't panic. Maybe just eat something before going to bed. Here's another one for you to consider. This one could be a farce on Broadway. In Medrash Bereshis Rabbah, a Roman noblewoman challenges Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta about what God has been doing since creation. Rabbi Yossi answers her, he's busy making shidduchim, he's mazabek zivugim. The noblewoman finds this idea utterly ridiculous. Surely that's a petty pastime for an all-powerful God. To prove her point, she takes 1,000 male and female slaves, pairs them off randomly with each other, and declares 500 instant marriages. But the next morning, total disaster. Some of the slaves show up beaten up, others have run away, and the rest are in tears, miserable, arguing, complete chaos. The noblewoman realizes she made a huge mistake, and she admits defeat. Your God is right, she tells Rabbi Yossi. Your Torah is true. Rabbi Yossi just shrugs and delivers the punchline. Didn't I tell you? You think it's easy? For God, even for God, it's hard to make lasting shidduchim, as hard as splitting the Red Sea. Now, at this point, you might be wondering, you might be thinking, why on earth did the sages of the Talmud include these amusing and bizarre anecdotes and sections? The Talmud is supposed to be a work of halakha, of wisdom, moral guidance. So why the anecdotes laced with dark humor? But this is exactly why Talmudic humor is so brilliant. Because these stories and passages all teach us something important through comedy. They highlight the ridiculous loopholes and anomalies in human nature or in the system, which proves that comedy is an effective teaching tool. You remember these stories and passages, especially because they are so ridiculous. And that's the genius of the Talmud. And this is exactly why Rabbah, one of the greatest of all the Amoraim of the Talmudic sages, started every shir with a joke. The Gemara in Maseches Shabbos Daf Lamed Amud Beis tells us, before he began teaching halacha to the sages, to his students, Rabbah would say something humorous, and then everybody would laugh. Then, once they were engaged, he would begin the serious learning. Why did he do this? Because Rabbah understood people. He knew that if he just launched into deep Torah study, the audience might be intimidated or tired or distracted. So instead, he started with laughter, a light moment, a joke, a relatable quip. And that broke down barriers, loosened people up, made them ready to learn. Because when people laugh, their minds open up. And this is exactly what makes Purim and Megillas Esther so brilliant. The story of Rabbah's comedic teaching shows us why Purim is so powerful. Purim isn't just a party, It's not just about drinking and dressing up. It's about survival. It's about taking our darkest moments and turning them into laughter. Haman tried to wipe us out, so we turned him into a joke. Achashverosh tried to control everything, but he comes across as a fool. Haman thought he was unstoppable, and he ended up leading Mordechai's horse and having excrement dropped on his head by his own daughter. Purim teaches us to laugh, not because the world isn't scary or because the things we deal with aren't serious, but because laughter is the best medicine. It is the best way of learning. It's why Jews have survived. It's the reason why we have so much knowledge. It's exactly why Jewish comedy exists. And it's why, no matter how many Hamans or enemies try to destroy us, we're still here, laughing. So the next time someone says, the Talmud is just about legal rulings, it's boring, tell them about Rabba's stand-up routine before every shir, and tell them about the toilet contents on Haman's head. Tell them that the Talmud turns the greatest enemy of the Jewish people into a slapstick clown, because humor is a Jewish survival strategy, because laughter is a form of wisdom, and because if we didn't laugh, we'd cry. Here's one final important source from the Gemara. It comes from Maseches Tanis, Daf Chof Beis Amud Aleph. Rabbi Dunner was in the marketplace, and suddenly Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, appeared to him. There he was. Rabbi Dunner asked, is there anyone here in the market who has a share in Olam Haba, in the world to come? Eliyahu looked around and he said, no. That's not what Rabbi Dunner wanted to hear. But then two men walked into the marketplace, cheery looking blokes. Eliyahu Hanavi says to Rabbi Dunner, pointing to them, those two, they have a share in Olam Haba. Really? That's amazing. Rabbi Dunner runs over to them and asks them, what do you do? He wanted to know why they have a share in Olam Haba. They look at him and smile. We're comedians, they say. Rabbi Dunner was taken aback. Are these really the people who have a share in Olam Haba? He asks them what their job entails. Simple. We cheer people up when they're depressed, and whenever we see two people fighting, we make peace between them. That's it. This pair had no grand theological achievements, no rabbinic credentials. They were just two guys making people laugh, putting people in a good mood, and bringing people together. And Eliyahu Hanavi tells us they are the ones who are destined for Olam Haba. Because humor isn't just entertainment, it's a mitzvah, it's chesed, and in the darkest times, it's survival. Mel Brooks understood this. He understood this idea when he made the movie The Producers and turned the Nazis into a joke. And the Megillah understood this when it turned our darkest moment, the moment when we nearly perished in a Holocaust, into a holiday of laughter. The idea behind it is this: Purim isn't just a fun holiday, it's an act of defiance. It's an annual reminder that no matter how many times they try to wipe us out, we flip the script. We take what was meant to destroy us and we turn it into a joke, a comedy. Because when we laugh, we say, no matter what happens, we are still here and we will not be broken. So this Purim, when you hear the Megillah, make sure to remember, you're not just hearing a story, you're hearing the greatest Jewish comedy ever written. And the joke, it's on them. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Purim Sameach. Thank you. Thank you.